Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This is being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. What's interesting is obviously we have that thing at the beginning where the church ends up getting attacked by Xers, but then it seems like that's only the beginning because throughout the episode, Grace almost gets run over by a truck kind of like drives her off the road, and it was her and Cal in the car, and things could have obviously been bad. And the complicated situation that comes with this is the fact is that obviously 828ers have a very bad reputation. Most recently, an 828er robbed a bank. There was a whole thing last season, once again, with the pilot. It's like, two people, blah, 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 with the plane and everything like that. So obviously 828, because it's a combination of people having no idea. It's fear, people being afraid of what they don't know. And at the same time, there is everything with the believers making it seem like, you have reason to be afraid because, look at them, they're powerful, look at what they're able to do. Like, obviously the believers look at it from a more positive, optimistic standpoint, where everyone else and Xers in particular comfort. Obviously they're the more fringe extreme, but there's still people that are afraid, and that fear is what motivates them. Even to the point certain cops are kind of dismissing a lot of this stuff, because it's like the cop that Michaela was talking to at the church and stuff like that was kind of like, yeah, they're not talking, whatever. It just, you're so dismissive. The same thing to the cop who was like, yeah, must have been texting and driving, and like, whoa. You're so laissez-faire about that. Like, who cares if they were texting and driving? They did something bad. Ben was like, aren't you going to check the cameras or something like that? And the cop's acting like it's nothing, because it's almost like, because he probably knows who Ben is. The fact is, Ben's been plastered everywhere, him and his family, so probably recognizing like, Saul, the last name Stone, is like, I know exactly who you are. So it's like, they treat it just kind of like, almost like, you're something special anyway, so who cares? Like, it's probably like, what happens? You're probably not going to die. I mean, the whole everything with the plane and everything. So now it's this complicated thing of just like, everything is escalating and getting worse. Like I said, like both extremes, being the believers and the Xers, it's all like congesting, and it's just all feeding off of each other. The more extreme one feels, the more extreme the other feels, and now it turns into this whole complicated thing. At the same time, you have Hope. I said Hope. Olive, I don't know why I said Hope. I think I was thinking the originals. But with Olive, she's afraid to even tell her parents, like, I was there, because she pulled the fire alarm when that dude Isaiah was getting beat up. He won't even say anything to Michaela, but she's like, the fact of the matter is, let me arrest them, then we can actually do something good with this. But it's at the same time, it's like, but the whole argument is, if you arrest them, who's to say things won't get worse? But it's like, if we do nothing, things will get worse. But Isaiah is kind of preaching from a very pacifist standpoint, of just kind of like, they will open their eyes soon enough to what they're doing. And it's like, all that's going to do is make them believe like, you're not going to do anything. Then they're going to keep doing what they're doing until people get hurt. Like, it's just getting people beat up now. But I mean, granted, that's not a good thing. But eventually it's going to lead to people getting killed. But, so, and obviously Olive goes to, Adrian about the whole situation. And he's kind of like, when it's all said and done, that you don't have to come from this at a place of fear, Olive. That's where your parents are coming from. And you have to come at this from a place of hope. And it's just like, sipping down that Kool-Aid. Especially when Michaela talks to him. It's like, you realize the danger of what you're doing, but he's, and it's something I brought up last episode. I wasn't sure whether or not Adrian actually because we know Ben confronted him last season about the reason why he started this church and everything. It was because he got notoriety and stuff like that. He became famous, he became important, and people are worshiping him, and he enjoys that, But the fact of the matter is, part of me was thinking like, maybe he kind of sniffed this BS so much that he's starting to believe it himself. But I think it is just a pure, like Michaela was kind of thinking, I think it is a con. Like I said, not listening ends up fun, because I think in Adrian's mind it's like, so what if I get a little extra off the top, because it's an argument that comes up later on. Churches get money all the time too, obviously. But the thing is, even though you make that argument, people super get pissed when they find out their pastors are rolling deep when it comes to money. They don't like that at all. So why would people be okay with like, yeah, I'm making a little money? But the fact that, because in his mind it's probably a situation of, as long as I'm helping people, who cares? Like, the fact of the matter is, I might not have started this with the most altruistic thing. But the fact of the matter is, people believe in it. It gives them hope. And is it really that bad? Well, yeah, it is. When you give people false hope, they're more likely to be, because especially the way they're setting Isaiah up, it looks like, oh man, Isaiah so wholeheartedly believes in this. The fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, you guys are magic. The moment they prove not to be magic, that's going to shatter his mind. Like, because you're feeding into like this, you're creating a delusion in these people's heads. Some people who might not be the most stable mentally, who might, start believing into these delusions that, creating delusions in their head about like, oh, you're magic, you're this and that, what you're able to do. And that might cause problems. Some of your believers might go to the extreme and do something to hurt the passengers because it's like, oh, it's all going to be okay. But you never know. I think that's what they're setting up with Isaiah. But obviously, Michaela's, once again, going back to her side of things, is the fact of the matter is she's having, she's dealing with cops kind of brushing her off. And it's not just out there with this particular case. It's even in the precinct. And the fact of the matter is, she's talking to Jared about everything, which Jared's like, well, the fact of the matter is I'm working kind of smaller cases because the captain's like, oh, because you smeared my name. It's like, Michaela's like, well, what do you expect? She literally kept asking you to handle this Zeke thing a different way. Did you? No, you were just kind of like, you were so basically up his own ass so much about this Michaela thing. It's almost like, oh, you knew what was best for Michaela. And it's like, no, Michaela can make her own damn choices, but you were trying to make choices for her. When she told you to back down, you should have. But you... Basically, he had this, he has this image of Michaela in his head, and it's almost like he puts her on a pedestal, and it's like, but now like that dream is broken, so like his image of Michaela is kind of shifted. But at the same time, she's like, the fact of the matter is, can you tell to everyone else to kind of back off, because it's already bad enough I got the 828 thing, but also that blue veil thing because of the whole thing between me and you. And he's like, oh, that's all in your head. She's like, oh yeah, sure, literally all that stuff is in my head. It's like, but yeah, you know what, you're 100% right, because the fact of the matter is, Michaela's like, no one's going to take this seriously until someone ends up dead. And she's like, I want to stop that. It seems like the only person that has her back 100% is Makami being like, yo, because I love it, because like when they were because obviously they're questioning one of the dudes who was caught on like footage running at the same time the extras were. So it's like, oh, maybe you're a witness, but he's acting all cagey. Like Michaela's like, oh, I want to push him further, but the captain's like, I don't know, because she's not willing to even trust Michaela's gut instinct. It's not even just a thing of like, oh, she had the calling in the background. She just has a good instincts. But the captain's so hard-headed because she has she has it out for Michaela a little bit. Like, it's just because of the way things have been run before, and she, it's like, oh, this ain't going to happen under my watch. So it's like she's overcorrecting to the point she's not really giving Michaela the freedom and leeway to do what she needs to do. It's like, oh, you want to push this guy? Get some evidence. And the only reason why Michaela ended up having any evidence is because Olive came forward, because Ben him and TJ were working together, and they basically found that the Xers are attacking in groups. They are they're making it so that the police are a little more stretched, and because like the attacks are happening all over the place, they're kind of making it seem more like random little things, that it's not really that big, but it's a very coordinated thing. The extras at last season were just like a whole bunch of just dudes acting up, and now it's spread once again because fear is a strong motivator to kind of push people to act in a certain way. Like, people are afraid of the unknown, so Olive came forward and ended up talking to Michaela, and Michaela says, like, you should tell your parents, because eventually all the stuff you try to hide, it's eventually going to come out. Michaela knows because literally she's going through all that, all the complicated stuff, like in her own life. It's like, last you want it to come from you personally, and not, your parents finding out on your own. So Olive points out the dude that they were interrogating, and they push him to give them some information. I love that when they get there, Makami's like, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, all these cops around, like, one could kind of turn against you. She's like, them giving me death glares and stuff like that, it's fine. But, out in the field, shoot me is one thing. And it's like, when Makami was like, I mean, are you really sure about that? And she's like, are you on my back on this? And Makami's like, yeah, of course. And then she's like, that's all I need. It's like, as long as I got one person on my side, then that's all okay. Sadly, by the time they get there, some places already cleared out. So now it turns into a thing of like Michaela being like, all right, there's got to be a leak here. And obviously the captain, she's not listening. And it's just kind of like, once again, it's because it's coming from Michaela. So I think at the same time, she's thinking Michaela's overblowing this, especially when Michaela brings up the fact is like, oh, this has something to do with her family. So it's kind of like, it's almost like she's trying to make it seem like Michaela has like a personal vendetta. It's like, you're not recognizing what's happening. Michaela is an 828er. And it's even something like, Jared had said of like, well, has she been wrong yet? She hasn't. So you should be trusting her a little bit more. But like I said, she's trying to overcompensate. Because granted, she doesn't know the ins and outs. But I'm wondering, even if she did know, because the thing is, Michaela doesn't, everyone already looks at her a bit of a freak. The last thing she needs is for people to know she's having like these little visions or callings to tell her kind of what to do and what direction to go. That's a whole thing in itself. You already got to deal with the major, with that whole situation. So obviously you don't want to deal with everyday people finding out about it. Hence kind of what I'm talking about, the whole Isaiah situation. So... And then we get the reveal of like, oh, who was the one that told, and it was Jared, because he was like, no, I didn't do it for your sake, I did it for her. Like, the bartender he's dating, like, her brother is obviously one of those Xers, because obviously Jared's kind of noticed that. So now the big question is Jared doing this to get closer on the inside without letting anyone know what he's up to? Because he does still care about Michaela, especially because he found out like, whoa, is Grace and them okay? Like, okay, because obviously despite everything, I don't think, because I was wondering, I was like, oh, please don't tell me you're just going to go full-blown asshole just because of the whole thing between you and Michaela. It's like, no, Jared's still a good guy. He's just going about this his own way, because he figured this was the best way to get close to the group, which we end up finding out that dude that Ben met with when it came to working at the college and everything, that dude and his wife from like the other episode, it seems like at the very least, it seems like he's the top dog in this whole Xer thing. Like, now what his exact issue is with, obviously we saw that the way his wife reacted to Grace and Cal. I can remember what her calling was, change her mind. Because this is the whole thing about trying to change, the Xer's mind to make them see that, the 828ers aren't bad, try and shift them from, because like they are literally both cults. Both Adrian's Church of Believers and the Xers, like I said, are just extreme cults on both sides. But the fact of the matter is, Olive come clean to her parents about everything, which for her, because it's, it's like, Ben, it's like, you shouldn't believe it. And even Grace was kind of backing him up in that point of like, you shouldn't believe this whole situation. Because she's like, why are you treating them like they're others? Like, the fact of the matter is they're people, and the fact of the matter is, because it's like Ben's like, but the fact of the matter is they put a spotlight on us, treating us differently like we aren't normal. And it's like, well, you aren't normal. It's like, yes, but these are people. But the fact of the matter is Ben and Michaela, like all these people, they didn't ask for this. And the fact of the matter is they're trying to make their best, make do with the best of it. So it's like, you can't, it's just a thing of like, sadly, Olive is a girl who's, she's a teenager, but she's, obviously in the eyes of her parents, she's still a little girl. That she's still that little girl who lost, her brother, her dad, and her aunt. The fact of the matter is that hole's slowly been filled up, but the fact of the matter is all that trauma, that damage, that pain you went through, it doesn't easily go away, especially at that age. Like, she doesn't really have anyone else she can talk to about it. So Adrian's words and the believers give her hope. They give her a place to fit in, because even amongst her family, she feels like she doesn't fit in, because literally everyone else is having this whole calling thing. So she needs somewhere she can belong, and the church makes her feel like she belongs. It feels like it gives her a purpose, gives her a point in the right direction, because she feels lost. And that's perfect people that cults go for, people who are confused and lost, so that turns into a whole thing of, trying to drag her back from that. But it's like, once you've kind of been sipping on the Kool-Aid for so long, especially someone in her situation, that Kool-Aid is so easily digestible, What's interesting, too, is, like, TJ's there, too. And it doesn't seem like TJ's all for the place. It just seems like he's only going for Olive's sake. But it seems like Olive is kind of getting into it. But I think TJ's listening to it. And it's like, Adrian's kind of making us seem like we're, like, godly beings or something like that. Like, just the look on his face, like he's being there supportive for Olive. And it's like, but I don't know if it's necessarily resonating with him. The thing is, he never brought anything up, because I guess Olive was like, yeah, don't tell my parents I go there. Maybe he doesn't know that it's his secret, but I definitely obviously it is a big secret. So obviously she must have made a point of like, don't tell my parents or something. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Like how TJ handles that going forward. Whether any of this really resonates with him or not. Like the way it's resonating with Adrian, you know? You know, because what also sucks is because in Olive's mind, she sees her dad as just kind of accepting this thing. And like Ben's like, okay, I get it. The fact of the matter is this is a scary situation. You know, in this whole death day thing on top of all of it, she feels like, you know, it's like Ben's just accepting. But he's like, we're not accepting it. The fact of the matter is, I know you're trying to help on your own. And I'm trying to find a way around this too, you know. But Adrian isn't the way. But, you know, so... that's just a whole complicated thing. And now Ben feels bad because at first he's like, okay, because he felt bad about the whole thing because he had the calling about save her. But the fact of the matter is he thought it was about, you know, their daughter because it's like, oh, maybe there's something wrong with the baby. But it's like, no, luckily everything's all right with her. But he feels bad because it's like, because he's been so focused on the major and stuff, he didn't recognize this other threat that's been brewing underneath everything. So, like the Xers have grown into obviously they're an organized organization now. They've been grown into a much bigger threat that literally no one else except for the 828ers, and obviously even Adrian is not giving them the credit for being the threats that they are. So you even had Ben at the end like rough Adrian up a little bit and it's like, stay away from my daughter. I was wondering if that was going to end up being Ben. I thought we wouldn't find out what happens, but it's like, no, straight up it reveals that it is Ben. He's like, stay away from my daughter. So obviously that's just going to push, you know, eventually Olive's going to hear about that and it's just going to push her closer because she feels like Ben's is getting in the way of something that she, you know, it's not because Ben is listening to that calling because it's like, her being around that is just going to end up getting her killed because if the Xers are going after believers, they've already got a target on her back because of the family and everything. But on top of her being a stone and being a believer, like if the Xers find out, that could get really, really ugly. So what was also interesting too is like the fact of the matter is Grace looks at the compass and she's like, oh, I recognize this symbol, and it ties back to the beginning of the episode where we had Olive when she was younger, you know, like 2 years into like the disappearance, the Flight 828 situation. 2 years into it, she still was kind of holding out hope that, you know, Cal was alive because she had dreams about it. But obviously it's like, well, Grace was telling her that wasn't the case, plus going to therapy. So it's probably like people thinking like, oh yeah, that's just your mind's way to try and compensate with the tragedy that you've been through. But she goes to a fortune teller who says like, oh, like the fact of the matter is all you need to do is look forward to the future and everything's going to basically work out all right. And that's been something that Olive, you know, has kind of kept as a mantra. And it turns out like one of the cards is a star. The tarot card is the star, and it has the exact same pattern. It's on the card as the pattern on the compass, and it's the triangle supposed to mean hope. So now Ben's like, maybe there is more to this, because obviously he tries to come at this from a very factual standpoint. Olive, like I said, coming at this from a more spiritual standpoint of being like, you know, you're not recognizing the fact that this is a miracle, but now it's like, maybe it is. Olive feeling the way she did, that we were still alive. Turns out we were still alive. The fact of the matter is, she ended up getting this card, and now literally 3 years and, you know, some change later, we end up here, and now there's a compass with that exact same marking zone. So they're probably, they might not go down this route, but maybe they'll try and track down that fortune teller. Maybe there'll be something to do with her. Maybe not. Maybe it's just like that card is a symbol of just the universe working in very mysterious ways. So I also should really quickly note, I literally forgot to talk about this, was the whole Zeke situation. Obviously for him, he's going through, you know, rehab, or, you know, he's going to meetings to kind of talk about his addiction and stuff like that. And obviously for him, it's like, you know, Michaela believes in him and everything, but he feels like he doesn't deserve it after everything that he's done, all the people he's hurt, including Michaela. So that guilt is kind of keeping him in place. Well, the dude at the meeting was suggesting, like, the fact of the matter is, if you can't really love yourself, like, it's basically kind of like, well, how can you expect to kind of really give your all to someone else? How can you move forward if you're literally carrying the past around with you? So you kind of have to make amends to people. It isn't about them forgiving you. It's about you forgiving yourself. That has to be the first step. So he meets someone named Courtney, which Courtney doesn't know the details about everything that happened with Zeke. She ended up saying, like, it's a situation of, oh, you went missing, so she doesn't know the ins and out. Zeke's mom probably has a better idea, but probably still doesn't know that he's necessarily 100% connected to this 828 thing. But he's trying to make amends to her, but she's kind of like, oh, you just kind of ghosted me for that long. Side note, I've seen that actress in something else. I don't remember what. I feel like I have, but maybe I'm imagining things. Regardless, I'd probably have to do some research. Compartment was wondering, is it from season 1 of The Sinner, which would be interesting if that was the case. I don't know if that's the same actress or not. It might not be. Like I said, I'm getting too much in my own head. But he's trying to make amends to her, but obviously obviously they have a very complicated history because, for him, he's like, he basically says like, oh, all I remember is the fact is like, because she's like, oh, you're talking about it like all we had were bad times. He was like, all I remember is us trying to get high, and obviously she take offense to that because it's like, oh, so that's all that relationship was for you. And he's like, no, it's not like that. And she's like, oh, good job trying to stay sober, because she can tell like looking at her like popping something, it's like he's struggling with it. So. But then later on, she shows up at Michaela's place, and she's like, I need someone to stay. And it's like, oh, who are you? Oh, I'm Courtney. I'm Zeke's wife. When Zeke looks at her like the thing of like, what you just said isn't 100% true. Because obviously they know it's probably a thing of like, yeah, they had a very complicated relationship. And the fact is that we're getting high all the time. But it was most likely a thing of like, maybe they were kind of high and they got married. It was never really I don't know. It's a complicated thing. Like, maybe they are legally married. Maybe they were going to get divorced. Maybe they were in the process of being separated before he ended up disappearing in that, year time frame. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. Your past coming back to haunt you while you're trying to move. Just when you are trying to make amends and move forward, that past kind of drags you back. Now, what that ends up turning into, especially considering all that Michaela ended up kind of literally blowing up her life for Zeke, and she was literally telling Zeke, nah, it's good, because he's like, oh, maybe all this is happening because you blew up your life for me, which is interesting considering the fact is Jarrett literally did the same thing for her, so it's sadly like almost a cycle of things kind of repeating themselves, which you can almost make the argument Jarrett's kind of doing it again with the bartender and everything to a certain extent, but then it's like, well, that might all be for the purpose, I'm leaning more so for that is definitely in the purpose of getting close and getting underneath this whole group. This probably is what the captain actually has him working on, but she doesn't want to let Michaela know about it. Or maybe he is 100% doing it on like just the conversations they had in the background made me think like there might be something there. A lot of really interesting things went down. I'm really curious to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.